Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to the Our Miami, the People's Forum. I'm so grateful to see the volume of people across Miami who are tuning in because they know that local leadership matters. Thank you for being here and for caring about the future of Miami. In partnership with 12 nonprofit organizations and the Miami Herald, we are here tonight to get to know the candidates running for County Commission seat for District 1. I want to thank our partners. I want to thank our board and our staff. I want to thank the candidates, and I want to thank you for taking the time to make an informed decision. So many of the quality of life issues that impact us here in Miami-Dade County are decided by our commissioners. District 1 includes Miami Gardens and Opa-Locka, and the leader chosen will play a critical role representing those communities at a county level, as well as weighing in on issues like transit, housing affordability, climate resilience, and how we spend our budget, which I know is especially in this moment on everyone's mind. Because of term limits that have been recently enacted, we will see 5 commission seats turn over. If you care about building a stronger, more equitable Miami, it matters that you're here. This is not a debate. It's an opportunity for the candidates to share about who they are and what they value. And I'm going to pass the mic over to our friend, Nancy Ankrum, Director of the Editorial Department at the Miami Herald, who is also the moderator of tonight's forum. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Ankrum. I am the editorial page editor of the Miami Herald, and I am moderating what should be a most interesting panel, a most interesting forum between the District 1 County Commission candidates, Sybrina Fulton, and Miami Gardens Mayor Oliver Gilbert. Just so that our audience knows what the guidelines are, our candidates will have about a minute to answer the first question directed to each of them, and then about 90 seconds to answer individual questions. Sometimes they will be asked the same questions. Sometimes they will be asked questions that are specific to their experiences. The questions that I ask are a combination of my own, the Miami Herald's, and Miami Foundation partners, and from you, the community. I hope some of you are watching and hear your questions asked. We do have the ability to mute. We do ask our candidates always to be civil to each other, not to engage in insults or gotchas. We want this to be a forum that leaves our audience informed and educated and able to make the best choice for them and for their district. So I would like to get started now and introduce both Miami Gardens Mayor Oliver Gilbert and resident and activist Ms. Sybrina Fulton. Welcome, both of you.
Hey, Nancy.
Hello there. And Ms. Fulton, are you unmuted?
Yes, I am.
Yes, thank you. I can hear you both. Thank you very, very much. I am going to jump right in and ask each of you, why are you the best candidate for this position? And I will start with Ms. Fulton.
Thank you for having me. I want to, just thank everybody for just taking time out of their busy schedule just to listen and to, learn more about both of us, the candidates. The reason why I feel like I'm the best candidate for the job is because I believe in the future of Miami-Dade County. I certainly believe that we can improve on some things. I bring a fresh new vision to Miami-Dade County, and I want to not just sit back and watch what happens. I want to participate in what's happening. Even though I am a national advocate, I have a passion for my local government. And so we'll talk about that later as far as experience is concerned and qualifications, but I just want to bring a fresh change. I don't want to do things business as usual.
Thank you very much. Mayor Gilbert?
Thank you, Nancy. And let me just say thank you and hello to the entire viewing audience. Thank you to the Miami Foundation for actually putting this on. Look, I feel like I'm the best candidate because I see all of us. You know, I was born and raised in this county, in this city of Miami Gardens. I went to law school, University of Miami, before that, FAMU for undergrad, high school, middle school, elementary school, all right here. And I've seen where we were, and I understand where we are, and I know where we can be. You know, we're fond of saying that we're a world-class community, but we're not there yet. Because world-class communities actually do things like provide meaningful mass education. We can do that if we actually dedicate ourselves to it. You know, I've been here in this community my entire life, and I've heard people run campaigns versus on platitudes and not politics. I offer something different. It's what I offer to Miami Gardens. I'm going to give you ideas, and we're going to try something different. We're going to try to actually bring small businesses up in every part of the county. We're going to actually try to stretch mass transit throughout the county. We're going to actually try to address sea rise as though it's not a problem for the beach, but it's a problem for all of us because they're an economic engine in this county and they support jobs. We're going to look at it as a county and not 13 different kingdoms or silos. We're going to try to create a great community for my kids and everyone else's. I look forward to having the conversation about policies and ideas. And that was the refreshing part of the invitation from the Miami Foundation. You all went out and asked people about ideas and solutions, and what was important to them. And you're giving us a chance to speak to that. And I appreciate it. And I look forward to talking to you all this evening.
Thank you both very much. This very day, the police director of the Miami-Dade County Police Department banned chokeholds. Talk about what you think of the elimination of this type of restraint. Mayor Gilbert?
I think it's altogether appropriate. I think it should have been banned before. You know, it's interesting that George Floyd's murder brought into the spotlight the idea that we should be reviewing our use of force and our policing methods. Those are things that we were doing in Miami Gardens before. So well before this started, we're actually almost finished with reviewing our use of force manual because some things are just outdated and some things are just inhumane. And so, you know, the director realizing that even if it took a national tragedy to get there, I think it's really important. And I'm happy that he took the step today.
Ms. Fulton?
I think that it should have never been in place. I think we need to get back to the basics and try to treat people as human beings. That never should have happened. That wasn't the first time it happened with George Floyd. We've seen what happened with Eric Garner in New York. He was in a chokehold. Nobody was arrested. A couple of officers lost their jobs. Some of those officers received their job back. And it was business as usual. And so we have to get out of that system of business as usual. And that's why it's so important that we make changes in our communities. We make changes with the laws. We make changes with ordinance. And we just need a change. We just need to revamp everything that's going on because people continue to do the same thing and people turn a blind eye to what's going on as if they did not know it. And we have people that's in charge that was upholding these type of things. So I think it's a good step. But that's what it is. It's a step towards getting justice and a step towards treating everybody equally.
Thank you. The rallying cry along those lines after George Floyd's death is now to, quote unquote, defund the police. That phrase means different things to different people, however. How do each of you define it? And what would you support? And what would be a bridge too far? And please be specific. You've both talked about change, which is definitely understood. But I think our audience would like to hear some specifics to get an idea of your ideas. Ms. Fulton, defunding the police, what does that mean to you?
I think defunding to the police and discussing that at this particular time is a bit far. I think there are some other measures that we can take before we get to that point. That should be the final thing that we do is defund the police department. My father was a police officer here in Miami-Dade County. He retired from there. And so I have a lot of respect for police officers, but we just need to make sure that we're holding police accountable for what they're doing. We got to make sure that you can't have a police on the police force that are continuing to have reprimands, continue to do things that are substandard, and we continue to allow them to be police officers. We have to start with right there in the system and correct the problem that's in the system. Another thing too is they need counseling. We need to make sure that if it's police officers that are going through struggles, crisis, and things like that, that they're receiving counseling. We have to make sure that we're bridging the gap between law enforcement and the community. These people should not be able to come in a community. You don't know the community, you don't know the culture, and you think just because somebody is talking loud that is a problem. I certainly believe that we need police in our community, but the police need to do police work and not try to be a social worker, not have to do save the cat from the tree and do all of these different things that they have police officers doing. They need to come, it's a serious crime. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Gilbert?
Well, as I understand the question, defund police does mean a lot of different things to different people. I think what it's trying to capture is the agitation and frustration with not just policing in America, but actually how funds have been diverted from other programs to police departments in America. I think that we need to pay attention to that. And so by no means am I in favor of taking, defunding police or closing down police department or abolishing police. No, I'm not in favor of that. But I think that we have to fund things with our budgets, because our budgets are ultimately our expressions of our values. Things like parks and recreation for kids. We need to systemically actually address mental illness, so police officers aren't actually the mental illness people, first responders for people on the streets. We need to find ways to actually fund our priorities that aren't police officers and isn't law enforcement. And I think one of the problems is that we haven't done that. One of the things that we did in Miami Gardens early on when I became mayor was I passed a $60 million general obligation bond. The reason I did that is because before I became mayor, the parks had been closed down for years. There were no activities on the parks. We talked about putting science, technology, engineering, mathematics, recording studios, television production areas, culinary arts, alternative building at Bunch Park that spoke to dance and boxing and martial arts, all of those things on parks, because we understood that you couldn't just fund the police department. You have to fund other things. And an important part of all the training that you give police officers in Miami Gardens, we've done implicit bias training and community policing training. And we've taken young people from our community and sent them to the police academy to actually become police officers. It's also accountability. If you have officers that are doing the wrong thing, if you have officers who are violating the standards of their training or the values of this community, you can't be afraid to actually terminate it.
Thank you. Ms. Fulton, you came into public view through a most tragic event, and that was the death of your son, Trayvon. How will that experience inform what you are committed to accomplishing should you become District 1 Commissioner?
Well, prior to that, I worked for Miami-Dade County for 24 years. And so not only was I a resident of Miami-Dade County, I also was an employee for Miami-Dade County. I also was a union member of here in Miami-Dade County. So I just feel like that experience working for Miami-Dade County gave me the service background, gave me the grassroots knowledge of what goes on and what residents need and the services that Miami-Dade County provide. That also gave me a passion to recognize that a lot of things that's going wrong with just a person just living day to day. Like we get so caught up with ordinance and laws and different things like that, we forget about the people. And so I just absolutely want people to know that I have a passion for people. I believe that that seat in District 1 is for the people. And I would make sure that I put the people's concerns over my own concerns, because I do have a passion for people. I do want to see things change. I don't want to move into another community. I want to stay right here and clean up what we have. We have so many people in high positions that will talk about what they should have done and they could have done, but they did not do it. And they have been there for quite a bit of time. I want to get in there with a fresh new pair of eyes and fresh new vision because of my passion.
Thank you. Let's move on to the second big story of the year, and that's the coronavirus pandemic. What was the effect of the pandemic on the district that you seek to represent? Did residents get the testing and the treatment they needed? Mayor Gilbert?
Well, we did. We were one of the first major sites that opened up in Miami Gardens at the Hard Rock Stadium. with testing. And so there was testing available. What I would have liked to see happen. And eventually we were able to work with the governor's office and work with folks to open it up. First, it was just first responders and the elderly. And my point to them was, well, the elderly live in the house with people, and so do first responders. So if a first responder's wife and kids, if a first responder is getting tested, their wife and kids should be getting tested. If my mom, who is elderly, is getting tested, my younger sister, who is in the house with her, should be getting tested also. And so we were able to work with them to open that up. And now they've even actually opened up antibody testing, because it's important to know how far this disease is spread through our community, understanding that a lot of the people who actually contract COVID-19 are going to contract it from people who are asymptomatic. And so it has been a challenge in so many ways, but in a lot of ways, Nancy, I think it's given us an opportunity to actually look at how we prepare, not just going forward, but how we prepared looking backwards. In Miami Gardens, you know, we've shut down a little bit quicker and a little bit harder, and we're slower to open because we understand that our population, we're the largest predominantly African-American city in the state of Florida, is particularly susceptible to COVID-19. And so we understand that getting a foothold in Miami Gardens could be particularly dangerous. But we also see the virtual programming, and we see the opportunities and the things that have happened and how the community has come together to actually support each other and to move forward. And that also includes how we financed all of these efforts. You know, a lot of different cities and are talking about finances. Look, money's tight right now. Anytime you close down the economy, the money's going to be tight. But the city of Miami Gardens, under my leadership, went from a 9% reserve to a 37% reserve. We prepared for a rainy day. Now, we thought that rain was going to be a hurricane. It turned out to be a global pandemic. But that's the type of thoughtfulness and leadership that understands and respects what people need and what communities need and how they actually move forward.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fulton, talk about and assess how the coronavirus pandemic affected the district that you want to represent.
One of the things that, of course, probably sometime next year, of course, there's going to be issues with the budget, because they have to allocate money for, you know, things that they had already on the budget to make sure that we had things in place for the coronavirus. But I think more importantly, that at the time when it first started, we were kind of lost. We were actually listening to the president of the United States, and also listening to Cuomo and the governor in New York, because, you know, nobody really stepped up. Nobody knew what to do. I think what we need to make sure that we put in place now is just like when we have hurricane season, we are expecting hurricane season. And so we prepare for it. I think it caught a lot of people off guard. They were not prepared. So we definitely need to have a plan in place to make sure that if this ever happens again, or some type of crisis, that we prepare. Residents were lost. You know, that's why they had the long lines. That's why they had to wait for food. That's why they depended on the stimulus check, because they were lost and they was afraid, because people were losing their job and they were laid off. And so I come from a different perspective. I'm not from the government side. I'm not from the politics side. I'm from the resident side. And I just believe people just did not know what to do in enough time. Eventually, they slowly got things together, and they started, you know, helping residents out. But that's what they should have been doing from day one, had they been prepared for a crisis.
Thank you. That leads to the next question, which is from one of the Miami Foundation's partners, and it deals with affordable housing. And COVID probably made the lockdown and the ability to make a living made the need for affordable housing even more acute. As a county commissioner, how do you plan to ensure that there is enough affordable housing for families, for low income, even for middle income families, as land, even vacant land, presents the pressure to develop luxury housing? Ms. Fulton?
I'm glad you asked that question. I came from Miami-Dade Housing Agency. I work as a hearing officer with Public Housing Section 8, and I'm very familiar with the shortage when it comes to housing. Right now, people are using about 50% of their income towards where they live, and that's just entirely too high. It should be about 30%. They should use about 30% of their income, but because the pay is so low, and the housing market is so high, people are coming in at a deficit and they're struggling to just keep a roof over their heads. And so what needs to happen is through affordable housing, they need to make sure that they're bringing money from not only local, but state and federal entities to try to bring more money in so people could, not just for corporations, but for home ownership as well. I'm not saying anything about public housing in Section 8. I certainly believe that there are people that need public housing in Section 8, but we need to get more people that's concerned and interested in home ownership, and we need to prepare them for home ownership and then move into that realm.
Thank you. Mayor Gilbert.
Yeah, housing is an important, and Nancy, we could actually have a whole forum just on affordable housing and the affordability of housing. And sometimes we actually use those terms interchangeable, but they're not. Affordable housing, the programs that are funded through the county, the state, and the federal government, Section 8, those are important because they're serving, as the Bible calls them, the least among us, people who can't make do, day in and day out. An equally large problem here in this community is that people who go to work every day and have jobs every day and have families, they can't afford to live in South Florida. And so that's the affordability of housing generally. That's our market. That's supply and demand. That's finding a way to increase density in areas. That's finding a way to take the infill program that we have here in the county and actually get people to build the houses quickly. That's finding a way to partner with our unions, maybe, to actually say, hey, you're working for the county, you're working for the state, you have this job. How about we get you we stop you from being a renter and we make you an actual homeowner? But we have to have policies, whether it's land use that speaks to density, whether it's the infill program, whether it's first time, second time, next time buyer programs that actually support the idea that people ought to be able to afford to live in the county that they actually work in. And lastly, I can't have this topic without actually talking about transportation. Listen, if we had some reliable mass transit that went throughout this entire county, housing would be a lot easier to accommodate because you have broader areas that you can get to these employment hubs easier without creating traffic and polluting the environment. We have to stop looking at the issues in South Florida in a silo. Housing is affected by transportation, economic development, job creation, quality of life, parks, everything is connected. We have to have that conversation as a community and then dedicate ourselves to actually addressing it.
Okay, Mayor, Ms. Fulton, Mayor Gilbert did introduce the issue of transportation, which was on my list. Talk about what you want to see in terms of how public transportation serves District 1 and, of course, the entire county. Throughout Mayor Jimenez's term as county mayor, there has been so much focus on the busway in South Dade and the best way to service the residents there, as well as extending Metro Rail to the north. Talk about what your district would need in terms of public transportation to be adequately served.
Miss Nancy, I think one of the things that needs to happen is back in 2002, I think I was loaned out from my department to work with transit for the half a penny sales tax, which they received. What I see is that a lot of people have made decisions that are higher up. They've made decisions not to use that money for what it was allocated for. That's the problem with the transportation as far as the Metro Rail is concerned. But I think that people have all of these fancy ideas and all of these plans, but they never get executed. That half a penny sales tax was never executed. They used it for other things. It was supposed to be used for a new structure that never happened. But even though they have the money now in a fund, they need to use the money not for other things, but use the money for what it was allocated for what the residents agreed to, because they wanted to make sure that some of the traffic was alleviated in their area. So I really believe that they should just do what they said they were going to do. This was back in 2002, 18 years ago or whatever, but they need to use that money for what they said and not just talk. Anybody could talk about what plans they have and what they want to do. It's another thing to execute. And that's what I'm about. I'm about results. I'm about executing the plan that I have in place. And so I actually believe that throughout Miami-Dade County, not only do they need to create a north corridor, but they also need to create a south corridor as well. They need to make sure that the people in Dade and the people in South Dade are able to get back and forth, and they're able to commute back and forth. So I'm not saying all the money should go to North Dade, but some money should go to South Dade. If that means cutting off some of the Metro Rail, then that's fine. But we need to make sure that people can get around in Miami-Dade County without getting so frustrated about the traffic that's here.
Let me make sure I'm clear on what you said. You said that there should be some pulling back. You would accept pulling back the extension of Metro Rail north to the north?
So that we don't take everything on the north end. I understand that South Dade would like to have a Metro Rail as well. So if that means that the Metro Rail does not go from Opa-Locka all the way to the stadium, then that's fine. Maybe it stops at a certain point. Maybe it stops at 167, the Palmetto Expressway. Maybe it stops there. But what I'm saying is not for us to use all the money in Northwest Dade, that we extend it, because we have to share with South Dade, because we might be creating another problem for South Dade. So I'm thinking that that's just an idea. Like I said, I have fresh new ideas. I don't want to do things business as usual. It's important that we think about these things and have a fresh new perspective on what's going on. They did not do what they were supposed to do with that money. That money was used for buses that were already in existence, to try to upgrade buses and buy additional buses. That money was supposed to be allocated in 2001, it was supposed to be allocated for the Metro Rail corridor.
All right, thank you. You mentioned Opa-Locka, also on my list. Opa-Locka's problems never seem to end with bouts of corruption and financial distress, crime, lack of affordable housing. We have a question from one of our viewers, Ariana Hernandez, who lives on Miami Beach. Can you talk about the possibility, which has been talked about, of dissolving Opa-Locka and making it part of unincorporated Miami-Dade? What is the best path to the future for this city? Ms. Fulton?
I think one of the things is you have to have an oversight. And I think we can't just rely on Opa-Locka to correct Opa-Locka. I think there definitely needs to be experts to come in to decide what's best for that city. I don't say that they should be incorporated with another city. I say try to fix what we have right now. Try to make sure that Opa-Locka comes back with the corruption. As far as the corruption is concerned, you can get rid of those things. Because corruption comes along with people, and that's in any city. That's Miami Garden, that's Miami-Dade County, that's Hialeah, that's Aventura. All of those cities have a problem with corruption, but some of them are more rampant than others. But I think with Opa-Locka, which I grew up in a part of Opa-Locka, which was considered Bunch Park. And so people are very proud to live there. They don't want to be included with Hialeah. They don't want to be included with someone else. They want to be able to say, listen, this is where I live. This is where my grandmother lived. This is where my great-grandmother lived, like something that I would say, because that's where they live, near Bunch Park Pool. But the thing about it is we got to make sure we bring people in that know what they're doing and understand the dynamics of it and clean it up. It happened in Miami-Dade County under Miami-Dade Housing Agency. US HUD came in, they took over that department and they straightened things out. Sometimes you have to bring somebody else in order to straighten things out because they can't quite get it amongst themselves.
Thank you very much. Mayor Gilbert.
Nancy, I'm going to talk about Opa-Locka. Are we going to come back to transportation later? I'm just curious.
We can do that if we have time.
Okay. It's interesting. There was a move in the state legislature to actually abolish Opa-Locka, and I opposed that legislation. I oppose having them absorbed into UMSA. I oppose having them absorbed by Miami Gardens or Hialeah. They have oversight now, and you might find that the elected officials in Opa-Locka now are trying very, very hard to dig themselves out of a hole. I think the county needs to help with that. I think the county really needs to help with that. And the county has been helping with that, and Commissioner Jordan has been helping with that. To the extent that we can help get them out of their debt with the county, that would be helpful. And then we need to put benchmarks in place. Listen, you meet this benchmark, okay, then we'll forgive a little bit more of this, and we'll help you out with this. We will help you out with policing. Understanding that the county and the neighboring areas have professional expertise that smaller cities sometimes might not have. I think Opa-Locka is a proud place. My dad's church, when I was growing up, was in Opa-Locka. I used to spend my time all the time on Alibaba Avenue. And the people there are good people, and they're trying their best. They just want a chance. And so I'm against abolishing Opa-Locka. I'm against absorbing them into UMSA. And I think that we really need to do a better job of putting those benchmarks in place and making it reflective and worthy of the city, the residents that live there. Thank you, Nancy.
Sure. Do you have faith, either of you, both of you, do you have faith in the current leaders to help get Opa-Locka out of its just constant morass?
I do. I think they're trying to do something different. What I hear from them is something different. I see the struggles over there, and I their Matthew Pygott often enough, and they are trying their best. They will need the county's help. Sure. They will absolutely need the county's help. Right. This is not your Opa-Locka of yesteryear. Right. These are folks who are dedicated to the residents and move this city forward. They need a helping hand, and we need to be that helping hand.
Ms. Fulton, do you have faith in the current leaders of Opa-Locka?
I do, because they are our new set of staff. All the people that were there are no longer there. Some of the people have been arrested because of corruption or because of suspicion of corruption. So I absolutely have every, I put, faith, and I am hopeful that they will do the right thing because they know all eyes are on them right now, and they're, holding themselves accountable for cleaning up what somebody else messed up.
Right. Mayor Gilbert, you've had a bit of a bumpy relationship with the Hard Rock Stadium, and it's clear that you don't think it has been doing the best it can for your community. Can you assess where things stand now and what you do hope to secure from them?
Well, it isn't a bumpy relationship now. We have a good understanding of each other, and they understand how I see community, Nancy. I see community as they're a part of it, not separate from it. And when we became a city, one of the failures of the city's incorporation was that there was a donut hole. The city didn't actually have control of Hard Rock Stadium. We had no say of what happened there. Code, zoning, building, any of that. And so when I became mayor, I started talking to them about it, and I said, hey, this has to change. And I think I came and talked to the Herald's editorial board about it, and they said, well, no, they weren't going to change, and the county kind of took their side, and so we sued the county. We sued to take control, and we ended up settling so that we have a large amount of control, and how we use that is making sure that they're a part of the community. Look, the beach has water and a beach to develop around. Miami Gardens has activity as a stadium. So when I'm out there trying to recruit businesses, as we've done, we're selling everything about Miami Gardens, and the stadiums is part of that. They just need to understand that while they have a stadium, and their stadium is meant for events and football and soccer and all that stuff, this is actually a community with 113,000 people, a community with a whole bunch of individual discrete households of people who put their lives into this place. And so while I'm going to have policies, and we're going to have policies that allow them to draw events to the stadium, because ultimately that will help with economic development in Miami Gardens and create jobs, we're never going to forget that somebody calls the other side of that turnpike, the other side of 27th Avenue, the other side of Snake Creek Road, somebody calls that home. Somebody has most of 80% of their wealth in their home. Somebody gets up and leaves early and comes back late, and they just want to enjoy the peaceful quietness of their house. And so we're going to try to balance all of that. And that's what happens. You'll find in communities across America, you have to find that balance, and we'll find it here in Miami Gardens.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fulton, Hard Rock, the Dolphins owners wanted to put a Formula One race on the streets of Miami Gardens, I guess once a year. What was your stance? What was your position on that?
I thought that it was absolutely ridiculous to want to put a racetrack in the middle of a bedroom community. There are residents that spoke up for that, but I guess the residents didn't have enough money. I guess the residents' voice wasn't being heard. And that's one of the issues that I have with the Hard Rock. They have to listen to the residents. I understand that they have billions of dollars, but these people really live there, and they don't want to have a racetrack in their backyard. Not only did we listen to the experts tell us, because I go to the community meetings, but they talked about the noise control, they talked about the pollution, and they talked about the traffic. Those were the three things they talked about. And the residents were clear when they said they do not want that racetrack. Put the racetrack in Homestead, where there are no houses that's around there. Why inconvenience the residents because you have more money? They need to listen more to what the residents want. And so I did not side with the Miami Dolphins owner. I sided with the residents because I am a resident of Miami Gardens. And I feel that it was just awful for you to make plans and do these things. And we had to find out through the Miami Herald. It was awful. Nobody wants to be treated like that. You want to feel a part of your own community. And so you have people that's making backroom deals and things like that. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It really is. And you didn't take it to Aventura. They didn't take it to Hialeah. Why Miami Gardens? Why did they decide to select Miami Gardens? When they were going to put it downtown, those residents said absolutely not. But you have a spot down south. Why not build it around the actual track that's already in place? Why go to a neighborhood?
Thank you very much. Mayor Gilbert, just briefly, did you support Formula One?
No, and I didn't support Formula One. I don't support Formula One. But I will say this: a lot of the heat and the rhetoric and the anger that evolved around it, we have to keep in mind that, and it's not a fait accompli that Formula One is coming to Miami Gardens. I think that the city actually has say in that. So it's gotten the county approval, but now it still has to get city approval. And so, but what I don't think is helpful, and I saw it, and it's something that we have to work on as a larger Miami-Dade community, is that every argument is an end of the world argument. No, I don't want Formula One in Miami Gardens. I don't think it's appropriately placed, and I don't think that it was presented to the community in the right way. But no, I don't think that that makes everything that the Dolphins do bad. I think that by and large, over the last 8 years since I've been mayor, we tried to build capacity in that relationship, and we tried to make them active players and then partners in the community. And I think they've done that.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to sea level rise. We know what the effects of sea level rise has been on Miami Beach, on Bayside communities. What does sea level rise, how has sea level rise affected the quality of life in District 1? And what are you willing to do as a commissioner, meaning how much are you willing to ask taxpayers to spend to correct it? Ms. Fulton?
I'm not well versed on that particular topic. What I would say is I would definitely hold community meetings. I would definitely talk to the residents and inform them and make sure they are more knowledgeable about the subject. We don't live in an area that we have flooding, definitely have flooding in the area, but we do not have like the ocean that's in the district. And so it's just certain things that I would educate the residents on. And so we'll make a collective decision. I'm going to say that and leave that right there.
Thank you. Mayor Gilbert?
Well, I mean, sea level rise is important to us, and we don't live on the beach. We don't have the Atlantic or the Pacific or the Gulf, but what we do have is jobs on the beach. And so one of the things that I like to talk about when I talk about sea level rise in the environment is that it's an existential threat to how we live in South Florida, not just if we live on Miami Beach, because the Miami Beach is an economic engine for South Florida. It's an economic engine for the tourism that comes through South Florida. And so when you start talking about factoring sea level rise and all those hotels and restaurants and all those things going offline, those are people's jobs that they're losing. And so, yeah, it's as big an issue for residents in Miami Gardens as it is on Miami Beach. It's as big an issue for residents in Hialeah as it is people who live close to Hollover. No, and it's not just a Miami Beach issue. If we have to invest in pumps, we have to invest in the best science. So far too often, we actually allow politics to determine what we do in scientific conversations. This is a scientific conversation. Let's engage the best minds and figure out how, from a local perspective, we can help stem the rising tide of something that's really caused by global warming. So let's figure that out together, but it definitely has to be figured out. And it definitely is a threat to everybody in Miami-Dade County, including the residents of Miami Gardens and District 1.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a question from one of the Miami Foundation's partners. Do you support sanctuary cities? How can we support you in making our county and cities safe for immigrants? And I would assume that also means undocumented immigrants. What's your stance there?
I don't believe that local government should be in the business, local government and local law enforcement should be in the business of enforcing federal immigration laws. And look, I used to be a prosecutor. From a practical perspective, creating relationships with people who may be undocumented and may be here illegally doesn't work if they're afraid when they encounter you that they are going to be deported. It makes it very difficult for us to be a community. The federal government loves to talk about separation of powers and what's in their purview. But it seems to me when it comes to sanctuary cities and enforcing their immigration laws, that's them. What we're here to do is something different. We're here to create great places for people to live. And that's by no means saying that if someone is here illegally and they commit an illegal, horrendous law that we should know. We can approach this thing with common sense. But common sense says that someone who gets pulled over for a busted tail light and they're here illegally, we're not holding them and notifying, immigration for that. We shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be in that business. We should be in the business of creating a world-class community for everybody who's here. And while we're talking about that, let me just say, we have in Miami Gardens something called the Department of Civic Engagement. We're in the process of encouraging people to be counted in the census. The census counts everyone, not every citizen. And so if you are here in Miami-Dade County, if you're here in District 1, please complete the census form, please.
Have you both completed the census?
Yes.
I have. I did mine online so they can see.
We have a question from Andre Green, and he lives in Miami Gardens. And he wants to ask about bringing equity to the Black communities of District 1. We have talked about affordable housing, but let's talk about economic development and small businesses and nurturing them and having them thrive, especially as many emerge from lockdown, devastating lockdown. Ms. Fulton?
Okay.
Ms. Fulton?
I believe that, of course, Ms. Nancy, that Miami is the international capital of vacation and tourism. And I think in order for people to start coming back to the economy, we're gonna have to make sure that they are feeling safe. And right now, people are not feeling safe traveling. They're not feeling safe on the beach. They're not feeling safe in restaurants and everything. And so in order to get that economy back up, we gotta make sure that we're doing the proper measures to make sure that COVID virus, even if we need to stay indoors for a little while longer, just to make sure, because the numbers are constantly increasing, and we just want people to feel safe, but we definitely want them to come back to our beaches and to take advantage of our hotels and the casinos and all of those things that are here. And so I believe that the economy will return, but we got to make sure that they're feeling safe here in Miami and District 1.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Gilbert?
I'm sorry, Nancy, could you repeat the question?
The question was about bringing equity, and this was from Andre Green, who lives in Miami Gardens. His question was about bringing equity to the district. He asks about affordable housing, which you've already addressed, but let's talk about economic parity. Let's talk about economic development and how you plan to support small businesses or attract larger ones.
Well, I think, and we've done a pretty good job of that at Miami Gardens, the economic growth in Miami Gardens. And how we did it was actually addressing land use first. We addressed land use first because along major commercial corridors, we had land that was zoned residential. And so we changed the zoning, and what we saw is businesses start coming. Then we start talking to the business owners and asking them about, what it took and to actually get open. And so then we start to refine our actual processes to actually allow people to open businesses easier. One of the things I think that we can do from the county is really pay attention to transportation and transportation-oriented development. If you bring the North Corridor north from Martin Luther King Station all the way, really not to County Line, because we don't really need to go to County Line. We really need to go to Nova Southeastern. We need to tie in Broward County to this so we can draw down more state funds, because that's a way that we could help actually pay for it. What you'll see along the way is when the land use is incorporated to allow for that transit, you'll see economic development pop up along that. That economic development creates jobs. Also, look, the county services, the things that have to go through the county, like fire, those things need to be easier. And I understand that it's a county service, but we need to find ways to distribute it regionally throughout the county, so you don't have to go down to either Doral or downtown or wherever to get this stuff done. Because ultimately, if you're opening a business in Miami Gardens or in District 1, it's going to benefit the whole county anyway. Let's try to get those Durham assets and those fire assets, and let's try to incorporate them to the greatest extent possible with city assets, so that it becomes a seamless process to actually open a business. And then something we did in Miami Gardens was we addressed impact fees and permit fees. Last year, I cut impact fees and permit fees. And my idea was, we have economic development that's going well, but I wanted to keep going well. So I want, to the greatest extent possible, to actually make it easier and a little cheaper for you to pull those permits. And that wasn't just for businesses, that was for residents also, who just want to put up a fence. Those type of things. And lastly, we need to have conversations with business owners and people who are starting businesses about this. That's what I did. I sat down and I talked to them. You tell me what it would take. And they talked to me about that. And when they talked to me about that, the policy was driven from their ideas and making it easier for them. This is something that's not beyond us. It escaped us for a while, but it's definitely within our grasp to create real economic development and create real jobs. And let me just say something else, just as an aside. How the county does business and who they do business with needs to be addressed. They need to complete the disparity study. They can figure out where they spend money, and they can find ways to spend money in a diverse way that encompasses and allows for, all communities to participate.
Okay, thank you. We have time for, I think, one more question. And Paula Wright, who also is a Miami Gardens resident, wants to know, what is your strategy for controlling gun violence? Mayor Gilbert?
It's not just a strategy for controlling gun violence. One of the things that we struggled with violence generally is that people think that gun violence is something that you stand all alone. Like you can just go into someone's house and take their guns. We don't control the regulations on guns in cities or counties. What we do control are other things. So how we've done it in Miami Gardens is a number of ways. And it's a moving target. We continue to work, but you actually invest in kids so they don't want to pick up guns early on. You actually work with partnerships like the ATF and the U.S. Marshals and the DEA to actually target cells of people who are actually engaged in high-risk activities and in violent activities. And you start pulling them off the street through investigations. We've done that. You create businesses that remove blight and remove the availability for people to linger in certain places, because the presence of economic activity, the presence of activity generally, people don't want to commit violent things, acts around people. And so you have to do that. And then in Miami Gardens, something we've done is invested in electronic crime detection, surveillance cameras, crime shot spotter, license plate readers, those type of things, because ultimately you don't want to over police the community, but you do have to provide for safety in the community. And lastly, I would say one of the things that we've done that I think will, all of these things will bear fruit in the future is hire officers from Miami Gardens. When I became mayor, the policy in Miami Gardens was to go around the country and hire people from all around the country. And some of those folks are good folks. But the policy that I created said, no, what we're going to do is emphasize giving residential preference to people, young men and young women who are applying to be police officers in their community.
What is the result of that?
Well, the result of that is we went from having a little less than 30% African-American force to a little bit over 50. And so the larger result is now we have our own brand of community policing, because community policing at its core wants to build, relationship between officers and the community. And that's important. And we do that. We do all the events, the coffee with the cop and the tea with the cop and the Pollo Tropical with the cop and the Walmart with the cop and the drive by and wave at the cop. And we do all of those things. Right. But it's important that kid who went to Norland and Carroll City, whose grandma lives here, who parks his cruiser in front of that house when he is not on duty, is preventing crime then also. That kid, that young man and that young woman, they have a vested interest in making this place safer. That type of engagement has to work.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Fulton?
It's been a while. What was the question again?
Gun violence. I forgot myself. Controlling gun violence. That was a question by one of a Miami Gardens resident, Paula Wright. You put me on the spot there.
I'm sorry.
What's your strategy as a commissioner for controlling gun violence?
Strategy that I have is getting the community more involved. We gotta get away from people not being able to identify and report what they see. A lot of times we can solve some of these cases by having a mechanism in place where residents can actually report what they see. I saw a black car, I saw a red car, I saw two young men. They need to be able to report that, and they need to make sure that they feel safe reporting that information. That's one of the things. But also we need to have grandmothers and grandfathers, when situations happen, they need to be able to talk to somebody about, my son came home with a gun. He has a machine gun and it's in the closet. They can't be afraid of those things. We can have the tea with the cops and the coffee with the cops, but it's not this area does not have a problem with police officers shooting our residents. So we don't need to address that. We need to address the retaliation. We need to address the gangs. We need to address those type of things. We need to identify the problem and work on the problem. I'm about results. I'm not about what fanciness you can write on paper and what plan you have in place if it's not being executed in a fashion that's appropriate and getting results.
Okay, thank you. Before we wrap up, I would like to give the two of you an opportunity to basically make about a 90-second closing statement as to why you are the best candidate for this seat that Commissioner Barbara Jordan is leaving. She is term limited. And so I will just start with Mayor Gilbert. Why are you the best candidate for this seat?
Nancy, let me just say thank you for having me this afternoon or this evening. Thank you to the Miami Foundation and all your partners. I appreciate it. And you mentioned Commissioner Jordan. I'm happy to have her support. I'm happy to have her support, not just because she's the current commissioner, but because she was a deputy county manager, assistant county manager, and she understands what it takes to actually be a policymaker in the county and how important this is. Look, I'm the best person for this seat because I'm the same kid who grew up here, who you all encouraged to go to law school, came back and worked in the community here. But because I don't run campaigns or run cities with slogans, I actually run it with policy. A lot of times, when people who are running for office, you'll listen to their ideas and there's no real way to metric whether they actually believe it. Well, I believe that we should be sending young men and women from our community to the police department because I did it and I paid for it. I believe in investing in kids because I did it. We paid for it. I believe in economic development and transportation because we created the trolley system and because we've been fighting for the North Corridor because we understand how important it is for economic development and jobs and the future of this county. I'm going to ask everyone within the sound of my voice and who will see this again to please pay attention throughout this entire campaign and listen for ideas. Listen for ideas and policies, because for far too long, the county has suffered behind rhetoric. What I want to do is change something. I want to create and help create a Miami-Dade County that actually works for the working men and working women in Miami-Dade County. a good place to live, not just a good place to visit. We can do that if we purpose ourselves together, but we need to do it now. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the opportunity to be in here. And I know my mom is watching, so hi, Mom.
Ms. Fulton, why are you the best candidate for this seat?
I'm the best candidate for this seat because I am not a politician currently. I am just a candidate that cares about people. I want to listen to people more, and I want to give that seat back to the people. I understand that Commissioner Jordan is in that seat now, and I feel like she's done a great job. I have her support as well. But by the same token, I think we just need a change. I think things need to improve. Just like we're getting ready to improve on the police department, we need to also put our trust back into politicians. And I believe people will be able to trust me. They will be able to look at me and say, she is actually compassionate about the people. She is a spokesperson for the people. Profit is good, but I would put the people over profit. A lot of people cannot say that. A lot of people have other motives. My motive is just to make sure that the residents in District 1 have a good and decent community, and I'll make sure that that happens.
Thank you both very, very much for taking the time to talk not just to me, but to potential voters and to people all over the county who are interested in the health of their community. And thank you also to all of the people who sent in questions. Again, that could have been a whole other 2 hours of just your very, very good questions from the community and also from the Miami Foundation's partners. And as I said at the beginning, I really wanted to make sure that our viewers left much more educated, much more engaged and illuminated in who wants to help run this county. And I think our two candidates really did accomplish that. And I wish you both the best of luck. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you, Nancy.
Welcome.